There's a lot of buttons. And
So did you finish your review yet?
yes, I did.
What are you thinking?
There's a lot of great ideas, and most of them are a little bit clunky, but it's paced well. The story is like little bits are like delivered quick enough to like keep it moving nicely. There's a lot of variety.
My God, it looks like a war zone.
It's trapped in the stone, and now it wants it back. What's with this fucking stone?
I haven't gotten too far into it yet. I'm curious to see where it goes from here. So far with the intro, with the first level, I love how immersive it is, and I love how just everything you do is to make you feel like you're part of that world. You know, like when you're opening a door, like it actually shows your hand opening a door or something, or like the way that you have to blink to like clear your eyes.
Right.
They have all this really cool stuff in there that's just meant that it's clearly just there to make you feel like part of that world. But then the actual gameplay, like the actual stuff that you're doing that's supposed to be challenging,
Right.
I'm not enjoying as much.
Yeah, and a lot of those mechanics like are interesting the first or second time, but then they just are kind of like thrown aside for like 5 episodes, and then like it'll come up briefly later as like an optional thing. So again, there's lots of ideas, but like they don't really take many of them to interesting places.
The combat especially, I'm really not enjoying it. I think it's because of the way that the control systems are set up, where you've got like this third-person view, but then there's like a first-person view kind of grafted on top of it.
It's weird because you can't. I mean, you can lock on and shoot from third person, but you can't like manually aim in third person. You have to go to first person to do most of your shooting. It's just a really bizarre thing. It would work like one way or the other.
And the other thing is that they make you go inside of your suit, like you open up your jacket,
Right.
and you're mixing and matching stuff, but then they don't pause the game for that. So there's times when you have to do that, like in the heat of battle, or at least when it urges you to.
Right. So that's one of those things that's like just not really in the service of good gameplay, even though it's cool in theory. But they do adjust to it somewhat, but that just results in the monsters being like twice as slow as they should be. Like there's never really any foes you fight throughout the entire game outside of maybe bosses that are like quick and will come right at you and hit you. The other ones will like run up and try to hit you, but you can just like run away a little bit and then run away a little bit again. And you can just dance infinitely around these enemies, and if you run like 20 feet away, then you go in your coat and mix some shit up real quick and then come back. And it makes sense if you're hotwiring a car or you're messing with an electrical box to zoom into seeing your hands do it, like that's cool. But it's not what the older Alone in the Dark games used to be, which is this like this kind of foreboding tension, and just like that mood isn't really there now.
The interesting stuff for me is like in the first couple of episodes anyways, when you're sort of navigating around this building that's falling apart as you're going through it, and you're climbing up walls and stuff, and they have some really interesting puzzles in there. But it's just like I said, when you get to that really just gamey stuff like combat, it feels like it's just tacked in, like thrown in unnecessarily.
The things you can do in the environment feel organic, but the way you do them like always feels very designed and very purposeful, and there's usually only one way out of a situation. But what did you think about the structure of like being able to skip between chapters? I mean, I don't know if you did it. I just played through linearly and then like checked out that functionality. But
I haven't used it much, but sort of like flipping through the guide and everything and looking around online and stuff, there are points where I want to go back right now and see certain things that I didn't try. Like, for example, I found out there's an achievement you can get if you play through the whole first level without blinking.
So because you're an achievement whore, that's why I'll use the...
Well, exactly. But I mean, it is really cool that you have that ability to just go back there. You don't have to start a new game necessarily.
Inside I was connected to something. It spoke to me.
It's okay. It's over now. You're safe.
I could feel it.
How is the story? Because so far, the first couple of chapters, it's not embarrassing yet.
Yeah,
but it's not.
That's kind of the thing.
It's
one of those game stories that, like, yes, thankfully, it's not like shamefully bad, and some of the voice acting's decent. Just kind of a throwaway love story in there. But like I said, just the pacing of it keeps the story moving, and what cutscenes there are decent. So it's you're not playing it for the story certainly, but it's not bad by any means.
Now, I think I read somewhere that the game was made in the Test Drive Unlimited engine.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's the same developer.
Yeah. So, like, how is the driving in this?
I like the driving parts. Like, I could understand people being frustrated because, like, if you mess up right near the end, you do start right at the beginning. And I had to do that, like, probably 2 or 3 times on each one of them. But I didn't think it was too bad, and they're really well scripted. And it's like the first driving sequence is like escaping through like a New York around Central Park that's all collapsing. And it happens the same way every time, but it is well done. It's exciting. I will say too, it's later in the game, like around the 7th episode, like at the end of the 6th episode, I was like, all right, I'm on pace to finish it in so and so hours. But the 7th episode, the whole game changes, like structurally. It goes from being this very linear, like play through buildings, play through underground caverns, blah blah blah, to being this big open central, like all of Central Park, and you have cars parked everywhere you can steal and drive around, and you have to go kill these evil roots, and you have to kill a certain amount of them before you can then get to the next like linear area to progress. And that part is big and open and takes a long time.
And is it fun?
I really liked it because that's when like all the organic like weapon mixing and all that comes into play the most, and that's when you got to like figure out these cool puzzle solutions. And it's just interesting that it felt like at one time the game was maybe all open like that and all third person, and then it turned into this like linear first person thing to kind of like, you know, wrangle it. I don't know. There's lots of those kind of like half-hearted design decisions here and there. But
and let's talk about the puzzles a little bit, because I know when I saw you playing the game before I got my hands on it, you were calling it Fire Solves Everything the game.
Yeah. It's weird. You have to kill almost all the enemies. Like, you have to kill it with fire. You can like beat a guy with an like axe for like 20 minutes, and you're just gonna lie there and get back up eventually. And you have to shoot enemies like on these little fissures running through them. And later in the game, you get like some tweaks to your vision that make it easier to see the fissures. But if you don't shoot them in that fissure, they'll keep coming after you. And there's usually the game like does a good job of usually putting stuff nearby you that you need as far as supplies, but it also kind of solves puzzles too easily. Because with each individual element, there's a lot you can do with it. When the game gets open, especially later in the game, the puzzles like allow for you to experiment. Again, they don't really take the like fire propagation and all these cool tech things. They don't really go anywhere with it, but when they do use it, it's cool. It just kind of makes me want to see these used in a more focused game.
Yeah.
And I like it as an adventure game, but it's like there's no way you're playing this as a survival horror game.
So we went to the message boards and asked our readers if they had some questions for you guys for Gears of War 2.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's going to be scary. Some of these guys are tough, so... The Outer Limits wants to know, how do you plan on supporting the game after its release? You know, because Gears of War was riddled with exploits for months. So what are you guys going to do for Gears of War 2?
Well, we actually supported the game as far as tweaking and essentially patching up a lot of those exploits. Grenade tagging being way too easy was my fuck up, and I apologize for that one. Basically, grenade tagging was initially set to be a little bit too easy, and it never got dialed back, and we actually wound up patching that in. We patched in a couple tweaks to Roadie Run after the game shipped, and there's also weapon balancing things that you have to do. You do your best job at balancing a game before it hits store shelves using things like usability with Microsoft and whatnot, and things can slip through, and that's what title updates are for. And so you have a download that is usually very quick for the game to update it, and you support it in that fashion and make sure that it's a well-balanced online experience. And then figure out ways to have cool downloadable map packs that sometimes are free and sometimes cost a fee.
This one is from Alchemist X. He wants to know, are Xbox 360 owners going to get fucked out of level and bosses again when you do an inevitable PC port? He wants to know, because if so, he's not buying Gears of War 2.
Well, that's a valid question, and I can tell you that there are things in Gears 2 that will make the levels that were in Gears PC look like a day at the beach, and the product as it ships will very, very much be worth the price that it winds up costing. And we haven't said anything about a PC version yet, so I think if he's holding out when the game hits and he hears about all the amazing experiences people are having in the single player, the multiplayer, and the co-op, it's going to be hard for him to resist it.